Welcome back to Believe in Eagles, presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, Lee Mayock, and joining us today, we've got a former NFL safety, a former front office guy, a current NFL draft guru. And if you're listening, up until right now, you probably think I'm just talking about my dad because he's our usual guest, but here comes the plot twist. Current prominent face of Monday Night Football on ESPN, Riddick. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. What's going on?
I know you're really busy, which actually I want to talk to you about that. You don't just do Monday Night Football on ESPN. You also have college games on Saturday. Monday Night Football on Mondays. Everyone talks about Kurt Herbstreit and his dog that does the crazy travel, but you have it too. How the hell do you do that? Like, actually, like, what does that look like? What do you do? How?
Well, the good thing is it's not every single week.
Right.
But for the first 2 months of the season, it's been a lot. We've had, this is like, I believe the 1, 2, 3, I think this is the fourth doubleheader coming up this week. We go to Seattle to see the Texans and the Seahawks. Yeah, it's just a lot of time management, to be honest with you. You got to really split your days up as far as understanding, like you set a certain amount of time that you work on the college assignment for that week, and then you kind of like just got to put it to the side, spend a certain amount of time working on the pro assignment for that week. Because if you don't, you'll get behind in one or the other. And then when you get behind, that's when you start feeling underprepared, and then you start getting, anxiety about the fact that you don't really have everything down the way you want. But it's just really about time management. The hardest part really are the late nights and early mornings of travel, because you're always staying up late working, and then you're always catching, at least for me anyway, catching like 5, 6 a.m. flights, and that's brutal. So when you're getting about 2-3 hours of sleep, it kind of catches up to you.
Then your Seattle game that's at like 10 p.m. Eastern time is not going to help you this week.
No. I'll catch a red eye out of Seattle. And you have to like connect because there's not like direct flights back to Philadelphia. So it's just, yeah. And then I'll, go up to NFL film NFL Turning Point that same day. So it's, but it's cool. It's cool. Look, it's football. We're not, there's a lot of people who would trade places with us to do what we do. So it's all good.
Do you find yourself preferring calling college or pro?
No, I mean, the game's the game. It's really two different beasts, to be honest with you. College games have a ton of pageantry, real emotion, real connected emotion, long-standing, deep-rooted emotion, because there's always a lot of alumni at these games, obviously, a lot of boosters, a lot of parents, a lot of family. And these kids, I mean, we say kids, but they're getting paid millions of dollars nowadays, some of them. But these kids are like very much so at a point in their life where they feel very connected to really that first big moment in their life. Going to college is a big moment for them. So there's always a ton of emotion around these games. And look, I love the colors. I love the bands. I love the fight songs. I love the traditions. So that always gives me a big, big boost to do these games. The pro game is very businesslike. I mean, it doesn't mean it's not exciting. I mean, hell, you were down in Atlanta at the Mercedes-Benz Dome last week. You saw just how crazy it was. Here's probably the one thing I would say. A lot of visiting fans wind up taking over certain home stadiums, especially if the home stadium is not, a team that is really entrenched in the NFL. So Buffalo fans always take over visiting stadiums. Raider fans take over visiting stadiums. Packer fans, Steeler fans. Half of the fans in the dome the other night were Bills fans. So there you have it.
And a lot of broken tables.
Yeah. When you go to Buffalo, there's only a few people who are brave enough to have tried that mess. I'm not one of them.
No, you're not going to try it?
No. Not with some of the injuries that I've had in my career. I wouldn't do that. But
okay, actually, that's probably a smart idea.
Yeah.
Keep yourself intact for TV because we need you there. Okay, so this is an Eagles pod. I have to know, you're in Jersey, but do you claim Philly?
Do I claim Philly?
Yeah.
No, look, the interesting thing about this, being that this is an Eagles-centric pod, and this isn't the first time I've said this, so I mean, Eagles fans aren't exactly going to be surprised by this. But when I was a kid, I wasn't an Eagles fan, because the interesting thing about that is when you grow up in southeastern Pennsylvania, the only teams that you got back then were the Eagles on network TV. We didn't have cable at the time, so I got kind of like tired of watching the Eagles all the damn time. And now Ron Jaworski is someone who I consider a dear friend and one of the nicest human beings ever to walk the face of the earth. And when I used to do TV with him when he used to work at ESPN, when we used to do NFL matchup together, I used to tell him, I said, Jaws, I used to hate watching you because you were the only person I could get every Sunday. And I was always a Tony Dorsett fan. So I wore 33 when I was a kid in Pop Warner. Dorsett went to Pitt. So then I really, really liked him. That's a lot of the reasons why I went to the University of Pittsburgh.
You went to Pitt for Tony Dorsett?
Yeah. I mean, Tony Dorsett is one of the greatest running backs of all time and one of the nicest people of all time. So
but you weren't a running back.
I was at one time. I played running back.
Okay.
When I was younger, I played both running back and defensive back. So Dorsett was my guy.
Okay. Yeah. So he brought you to Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then.
Well, he didn't bring me to Pitt. It was an influence on why I went there.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah.
Okay. So you hate the Eagles.
No, I don't hate the Eagles. I don't hate the Eagles, so don't get this fan base all riled up.
I won't.
No, I don't hate the Eagles. I mean, my history with them as far as, me as a fan and not being a fan and whatever, and my work history there is well known. So, but look, we're all professionals. We all move on.
Okay, so then talk to me about them because my dad was on last week and it was so crazy because we were sitting down to do the pod and I was like, oh my God, Dad, we haven't had to do a pod after a loss in so long, which is crazy. And then like, here I am doing it again. That Giants game was nuts, but there were a lot of injuries, so you can't forget that. Where does the disconnect start? I know there's a lot of talk about the offense, but like you're a defensive minded guy. There was a lot of mistakes on the defense. Tell me what you saw.
Look, I think there's no question that this football team does not dominate the line of scrimmage like it has in years past, like it did in particular last year. I mean, just think back to the season that Saquon had a year ago and maybe why he's having some of the struggles that he's having now. All of that really is predicated on the offensive line is just not the same group of five that it was a year ago, and they're not dominating the same way. He's not getting the same kind of spacing and the same kind of ability to get to the second level without having any kind of contact like he did a year ago. Now he's having to work a lot harder for it. And take it back a little bit further, they don't have the same offensive coordinator now. Kevin Patullo's offensive coordinator now. And so he has to kind of figure out, what is it? What's different about me? How do I put my own spin on this while at the same time adjusting to this team isn't exactly the same as it was a year ago when Kellen was calling the plays. And I have to make adjustments for that. So that's a little bit different. It doesn't help when you have so many superstar players and some of them start to really become loud about wanting the football, because then that kind of organically messes up how the offense runs. Because then the quarterback starts thinking, well, damn, I need to push the ball to him. I need to push the ball to him. And if you watch the Tampa game a couple of weeks ago, they're trying to push the ball to A.J. Brown when Tampa Bay is saying, no, we're not going to let you push the ball to A.J. Brown because we understand who he is. So that takes you out of a rhythm even further. Then you flip it over to the defense. They're not as dominant up front as they were a year ago when they wrecked the Super Bowl. They're a little bit different in the secondary, obviously opposite Quinyon Mitchell. Then he gets banged up. So now you really at a little bit of a deficit, and you saw some of that start to show up as well. So, yeah, every year is different, even though you have a lot of the key players back. Every single year, even if your team had 90% of the players come back from the previous year, you start over once the clock hits January, February. You cannot just bank on, well, we did this last year. We'll just click it on when we need to this year. Everything is different in terms of kind of like reformulating that chemistry and all. I mean, the Patriots used to talk about that all the time, despite them always being good for 20 plus years with Brady at the quarterback position. Every year, Bill did a great job of making them understand it doesn't matter what you did the year before. It's a totally different team now. It's a totally different year. You're different as people. You have different things that affect you. Your health may be different. There's so many different things. And I think with Philadelphia, you're seeing them experience some of that now.
Do you think is it too late to come back from that? Like, are they taking too long to find themselves, to fix themselves? Or, I mean, they're coming off of like a mini bye right now.
Yeah.
Is this a big kind of game to kind of get a momentum back, or what do you think?
Well, look, it's never too late. But the interesting thing about this is, one, obviously they have to get healthy. They have to have all of their horses ready to roll. I don't know. Look, the interesting part about that is like getting healthy is kind of just like it's a cool catchphrase. Nobody gets healthier as the season goes along. It's just a matter of
Band-Aid on it?
surviving and sustaining. Now, could they get guys back, get guys available and on the field? That's one thing. But usually, as the season goes along, it's really a matter of it's kind of like running a 100-meter dash. You don't accelerate for 100 meters. It's really the person that decelerates the least that wins the race.
Okay.
So it's how long can you sustain running at maximum speed, and that's really what the NFL season is like. So for Philadelphia, the guys who are playing need to like kind of maintain, and they need to make sure that they get bodies back, so then they can deal with what is increasingly becoming an interesting division in its own right.
It is.
You saw what the Giants did to them, and you saw the effect that Jackson Dart is having on the New York Giants, and they're not 100% healthy either. Washington, notwithstanding losing that game to Chicago in a really weird way, they're going to be there in the end. Mm-hmm. So that's just in the division. Then, of course, the NFC North is going to be strong. Green Bay will be there in the end. Detroit will be there in the end. Tampa Bay looks super strong in the South. Atlanta is coming along. The NFC West is going to be strong with the Rams, the 49ers. They're dealing with their own issues. Seattle, I get to see some. So it's not a given. It's not a given that, that Philadelphia can, even at full strength, make it back to where they were a year ago. They just truly got to take this game by game and just try and get as many bodies back as possible, because that's really what the NFL is like. It's a survival of the fittest competition. That's what it is.
Okay, you've been like in the midst of so many different teams and so many different perspectives. I've been hearing the term players only meeting this year more so than I've had in so long. And to me, that is screaming like there's a problem. Am I reading too much into that? Or like, what does it take to have a players only meeting? And why am I hearing so much about these? Like, what's going on?
Well, I think they've always gone on. Just that now with social media and everyone wanting to run their mouth about every single thing, nothing gets kept in-house. So now not only do you hear so for instance, when A.J. Brown and I guess Saquon and Jalen Hurts had a players-only meeting, I'm like, why are you talking about the fact that you had a players-only meeting? Like, how did that get out in the first place? Mm-hmm. Why do you find it important to let people know? Right. That's why it's called players only, because it's supposed to be confidential.
Right.
So, and look, we had those before. I mean, they've happened since the beginning of time when players get together and say, look, we need to police this thing from the inside out and not have the coaches and support staff to try to solve our problems. That's a normal thing in sports. We hear about them now again, though, because everyone wants to talk about something. And then what happens is, look, we're in a very different age, I believe, of athletes. They want to air their feelings and their stance on things at a very, very alarmingly high rate. And kind of they call it being transparent. The media claims to and I'm part of the media, when people are transparent. But the fact of the matter is, if you put your hat on as an athlete or as a coach, that's the last damn thing that you want, is for people to be talking about your team and letting things out that, I don't know if, when you get on the field, you're going to be sitting there looking at a teammate of yours going, I'm not going to try as hard simply because you talk to the media. But what it does is it's some way, shape, or it's hard to quantify this kind of thing. But when players aren't happy and players don't trust one another, or they don't trust coaches, or there's public bickering, what it does is it breaks down people's morale. Mm-hmm. And it breaks down people's willingness to do the extra things that ultimately lead to wins and losses, like spend a little extra time together in the facility, away from the facility, in the training room, watching tape, maybe running a few extra routes after practice, getting an extra lift, getting an extra, rehab session. because you just wind up going, you know what? I don't trust this guy, or I don't like this guy, or I don't trust that coach, or I don't like the. I mean, just look at what's going on in Miami, for instance, right now. It's ridiculous that you come out and talk about a players only meeting and then have to walk it back because you basically threw your coach under the bus about accountability. It's just that's the world we live in now. That's the world we live in. It's instant news. Everyone wants a headline, and very rarely does it work out the way you want.
Yeah, I didn't think it was great that it wasn't a good sign that we're hearing about players only meetings. And all right, last thing, I know you're literally the busiest, but what for the Eagles fans out there, what does it take? What key points to the game to beat Minnesota this week?
Yeah, I think it's always the same
for this team.
Well, generally speaking, but I think for this football team, this is what Philadelphia, to me, from looking at it from the outside in, really needs to do. Look, when they are at their best, they are dominating both lines of scrimmage, and Saquon is the focal point of the offense, and Jalen is a complementary piece to Saquon being the focal point of the offense because of the fact that Jalen is such a strong runner, can be a guy who makes you defend 11 on 11, meaning the quarterback is truly a threat running the football, whether it be in push situations, third and short situations where he's running zone read or down on the goal line, where now he can get out on the perimeter and run the football. That's who they are. And from there, they throw the football. Okay. And AJ is one of the best outside lane winners, meaning a guy who runs his routes on the outside of the numbers. And he's so damn strong and so big that he can do this so many different things and win in so many different ways. They need to get creative with him. Don't forget Devontae Smith. Dallas Goedert is a very good football player, but winning games inside out for them is where it starts. And 26 has to be that guy because he's the same guy physically. Okay. It's just that the lanes are not the same this year. Defensively, look, they need Jalen Carter on the field. Mm-hmm. They don't need him getting thrown out of games. They don't need him unhealthy on the sideline. They need him on the field because when he's on the field, he's basically unblockable, and you have to devote so many resources to him that it opens up other people because then they get one-on-ones because you have to commit 2-3 guys to him. They got to get healthy. In the secondary, Quinyon Mitchell has to be on the field because really right now, when they use betting terminology of do you take the Eagles or the field to get back to the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Right now, there's no question you would take the field. You would say, I'll bet on some other team coming into this and the Eagles not just repeating, simply because the rest of the NFC has gotten a lot better. And they seem to be not really hitting their stride. So there's time, but I think their identity and how they won the Super Bowl a year ago and who they are at their core and the way they're built, they have to reestablish that. And that's going to be about players being healthy and the coaching staff saying, you know what, I'm not going to just sit and listen to everyone gripe about, I want my touches, I want mine. Just run the football team the way it's built, and that probably gives you the best chance to win.
Okay, well, there you have it. Thank you so much for joining our pod. We always say it, but the more you talk, I feel like the more we all learn. So thank you so much, and I hope you sleep on all your flights.
Yeah, I'll try. Thanks.
Thanks, Lewis.